Hello everyone and welcome back to our brand new day of Road to TCG Worlds 2019. Thanks so much for being here. We are going into our final review of the third champion deck, as we did have a triple regional weekend all over the place, all over the world rather. We had Sao Paulo regionals, won by yours truly. You can check out the video on my channel. And then we had Santa Clara Regionals, the first North American event that had Unbroken Bonds available to it, won by Kiana Mini. Also posted a review previously on my channel in case you haven't checked it out. And then we had Sydney Regionals, won by Aaron Vanderkolk, who ended up using Zapdos Ultra Beast. Now, I would argue that the tier 1 decks right now are probably these two, with everything else like having a decent chance against these sort of decks. However, I do believe that Registard and Zapdos Ultra Beast are probably just slightly higher and better than the rest. Of course, there are ways to counter either or both decks. They both have some really good matchups and also some really bad matchups. But there's no deck that beats everything. If there was, then that would be the single best deck in the format. So a lot comes down to matchups. And as I mentioned in my tournament report, I faced, out of 14 rounds, half of them were mirror matches, right? So I was very lucky to face against Regisards, opposing Regisards, and I was also very lucky to have built my list. Well, I guess that's not luck, yeah? I decided to build my list in order to be as consistent as possible, which gave me the edge against the more teched out Regisard lists that I faced off against. And Aaron also mentioned, he shared with me the matchups that he ended up playing. And he mentioned that he ended up playing against 4 Regisards, yeah? So they had 8 rounds and then a cut to top 8. So his first round was against Baby Blounce, which he ended up winning. Then his second round was against Regisard, which he ended up losing. He didn't give me any details on which kind of Regisard build that was. Greens with 4 Volcanions, that can definitely be tougher for Regisard. The Kiawe base builds, they do rely a lot on Miltank to be able to get past that big HP, or to make sure that Zapdos can't get past the big HP. So that was his first loss of the tournament. Then he went up against Pikachu Zekrom, where Baby Buzzle and Tapu Koko GX can be pretty, can apply a lot of pressure. Zorg, Box, no mention specifically, but I assume it has Persian and Slowking and whatnot. He ended up winning that, where obviously Deceptive Striker that he did have instead of Jolteon GX that we featured on our channel must have helped to eliminate the potential of Mog, stopping you from just continuing to draw and look at different cards. Then he played against back-to-back Regisards. Once again, no mention of which variant it was. However, he did end up beating both of them. And then finally, he played against a Whizzing deck, which was his second loss of the day. He was 5-2 at that point, so he needed to win the last round and then hope that his resistance would hold to clinch one of the 2 top 8 spots reserved for, not reserved, but the 2 top 8 spots that would go to people at a 60 record. And he ended up beating a Regisard in the last round. So far his record was 3-1 against Regisard, not a bad deal. And he ended up making it into the top cut at 7th seed. Now, afterwards, he ended up beating Sap Beast, losing the first game and then winning the other 2. Pretty nice. Always nice to recover like that from a mirror match. He did mention that Cortana was super strong overall, yeah, which is definitely something that we haven't seen included in too many deck lists, and that the 1/1 Zip Striker was pretty okay. Next up in top 4, he played against his 5th Regisard, which he ended up handily beating 2-0, putting him at a 4-1 record against the deck overall. And finally, he ended up beating another Zoro Box deck in the finals. He ended up losing the first game, but then winning the other 2. I'm sure Substriga carried him through a lot of those games by being able to steal, see, and find cards at the right time for in order to compensate for Alolan Mog stopping his Jirachi. Now, the mention of the Cortana being strong overall, I think is really cool. Cortana is a kind of a weak Ultra Beast. It has only 70 HP, so it's very frail, just like in the video game, so it makes sense. And then the attack, it's like Baby Buzzwoles, but for when you have 4 prize cards. So it's a nice way to get a KO on a Zapdos. It's a nice way to get a retaliation KO on stuff. It can deal with Lycanroc Chicks as well, which is awesome. However, its use only lasts 1 turn, so that's definitely the worry for Cortana. But I guess he mentioned it was super strong, so that's really good. Having the ability to deal 120 damage straight up without having to use Electro Powers definitely plays nicely into the late game where you can save those Electro Powers to make sure that Zapdos is hitting the right amount of damage. Of course, he has Buzzwole, Pheromosa, and Nihilego as well for his other Ultra Beast, Buzzwole Pheromosa GX, providing a way to take 2 prizes at once with its GX move, and then Buzzwole hitting really hard with the Fighting type for Sledgehammer, and Nihilego hitting really hard when your opponent is about to win the game at 2 prizes. The one thing he did mention, however, was that with the meta right now, he should have played Basic Energy and P-Strings to help. Yeah, he said he was pretty lucky to hit Reshizzards, but seeing the metagame, he said he dodged a lot of the Zoroark, and Zoroark decks missed the cut. So something more based on Basic Energies, I assume Fighting type, and B-Strings would have definitely made Buzzwole a lot more effective, and perhaps just having that really good typing in Lightning would have helped him overall to compensate for the lack of firepower that you end up having against decks like Zoroark or sometimes even Pigrom with just the Zapdos, right? So this gives you the list that he used to win with gives you a lot of versatility, but he's saying in hindsight, yeah, after the tournament, he probably would have had an easier time against the overall meta, or would have been more favored against the overall meta if he had kept, or if he had different matchups throughout the Swiss rounds. He would have had a much easier time by just having basic energies and relying more on the pure fighting typing of Buzzwole, not only on Sledgehammer, but being able to power up all the way up to Swing Around. Now, his list is super consistent. You have the standard 4 Jirachi, 3 Zapdos, along with one of each of the useful Ultra Beasts. The 1/1 Substriga helps in preventing a Alolan Mog from completely wrecking you. The Kogo GX and Kogo Prism duo is here to make sure that you have that extra oomph in the late game, and we have the Marshadow let loose to make sure that we are disrupting our opponent quite a bit. Now, very low on the supporter count for Lily and only to Cynthia, but that's where Jirachi does its magic for the most part. And then he has the standard 3 switches, 2 escape ropes, 2 escape boards, the 2 choice bands, the 9 energy with a 4-4-1 split, the 4 electro powers, of course, and he does have the Shrine of Punishment to help get that little bit of extra damage to make sure that Zapdos is hitting the right numbers and KOing the right Pokemon. So pretty solid list overall, very similar to the one I featured on YouTube a couple of days ago. So if you want to check that out, definitely go to the video section and find it there. I should have a Zapdos and Buzzwole Pheromosa thumbnail, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that to get a glimpse of how the deck works in case you don't know how or what is the best way to play it. The list is slightly different, but the concept is basically the same. And so that will be all for this video. Big thanks to Aaron for sharing his list, sharing his matchups, and giving us a little bit of feedback and insight on what his thoughts post-tournament were. I'm sure he's pretty happy with this victory. I know he's been not struggling, but he's not been having the results he wanted throughout the season, so I'm sure this is a big win. And just like it was for me, I was very happy when I read that he ended up winning the tournament. So yeah, Sydney was the smaller tournament overall, but that doesn't mean it was any easier, simply because smaller tournaments like that, like those regionals, they draw in the best players usually from the region. So those tournaments actually end up being harder than something like NAIC, where you have a huge mix of newer players, experienced players, veteran players, pro players, all kinds of people. These sort of regionals, especially in that region, they do feature a high concentration of really good players in a very small field. Yeah, so every round ends up being quite difficult. A lot of people argue that the Oceania International Tournament is the easiest, but I would actually argue it's actually the hardest, because you have the same competitors like based on the stipends and travel awards from all the other regions, except the overall field is just smaller. Therefore, your chances of running into one of those players is actually much higher than at any of the other internationals. But anyways, that's a whole other subject, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like. We're still gonna do this impromptu version of videos until I'm back in Mexico. You guys should be watching this on Thursday, so there's still Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday videos to go. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to see, leave me a comment down below. I try to read everything. I am holding a giveaway in my Sao Paulo video, so definitely check that out. Super easy. All you need to do is comment on the video to enter, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye!